My name is Katie, and I'm the creator of a style system called Fantastical Beauty. In this video, I'm going to take you through the 3 face types that determine your fantasy base type, fantasy archetype. I'm going to be reading some from the book, which is available on the website for free as a PDF and has a lot of good information for determining your type. And it can also just be another way of receiving the information, reading it slowly. Sometimes that'll help reinforce an idea that I cover here. The 3 face types are full, narrow, and balanced. And they each have other names that can sort of help provide a picture of what those features actually are. Full can be called wide. There's a lot of horizontal lines. Full can be called lush. Narrow can be called linear or angular, vertical lines. And balanced can also be called compact. Even, featured. Those are some of the words that are other descriptors for these 3 face types. A full face is a combination of width and full or large features. So we're thinking of wide set eyes that are very large, softly wide nose, a wide, large mouth with very full lips, rounded or broad cheekbones, and then a face shape that has usually some length and some width. They tend to be larger faces. There are 2 balance aspects that we're going to look at to the faces. The first one is a triangle shape drawn between the pupils and the center of the mouth. That can help rule out one of the types quite quickly or rule a type in. It's one feature that we're going to look for. And then another is when someone is smiling, a toothy smile, does their mouth pull and bow upward? Does it pull wide? We're looking for other clues about the lines involved. If they're more, what is this? If they're more vertical, or if they're more horizontal, or if they're just sort of somewhere in between in a balanced way. A narrow face has more vertical spacing between the features, and the features are closer set, thinner, and sharper. So the eyes can be close set, maybe smallish, set on a line. They might be at a slight angle. There's going to be length to the nose, maybe sharpness as well, especially from the side. You might get the 45-degree angle. You're probably going to see thin lips, maybe a shorter, narrower mouth as well. So the movement really becomes vertical. And there's either like a strong vertical movement or a notable sharpness to the linear faces. Balance in this context primarily refers to the spacing of eyes, nose, and mouth in relation to one another. So we're looking at an equilateral triangle there, as well as to the sizing to a lesser extent. So the sizing, you're not going to have the super full or super thin lips usually, unless all of the features are like this is where you get into a sort of a runner-up type. But the balanced faces are going to be very balanced. So there's the movement of the visual movement when you look at the face is not going to pull the eye downward, and it's not going to pull the eye side to side, and there's not like an obvious lushness or fullness to the features. Everything's a little more moderate, a little more still when you look at the face. There's not that pulling movement of visual direction from the lines in the face. So I think that one of the ways that we might see this, that it might be helpful to talk through this, is if we look at some examples. And there are 3 actresses that I've briefly looked at, but we are going to look at more in depth now and walk through that. And if at the end you're still struggling between 2 types, I have a few notes on what you might do if you're still struggling as well. The first actress, perhaps she's not the best example because I struggle to see a runner-up type for her. And this video is primarily I'm trying to help people who are feeling stuck between two types, but I still think that just looking at the features will help you see how to look at features. And if not you, then sometimes it's just easier to ask somebody else, someone who's sort of familiar with the ideas, for their opinion. I think it can be incredibly hard to see ourselves. I think it's really, really, really hard to see ourselves in a fair way, that we don't get caught up in our own heads. So it's a point where an external opinion could be useful. It's something to consider. You have to be careful about who you ask for feedback. You have to respect their eye. You have to trust them and respect their eye for what you're asking for feedback on. I don't think you should ask just anyone. But back to Jennifer Aniston. She has, look at her, start with the triangle between her pupils and the center of her mouth, and you can see right away that it is not an equilateral triangle, that she has length in the spacing of those features. She has length in her face. Her face itself is more elongated than it is wide. It's an oval. It's a fairly narrow sort of an oval. Her lips are thin. Her nose has length. Her eyes are set on a line, and they're a bit narrowly spaced, and they are, there's like a sleekness to them, right? Her jawline has a bit of sharpness in it. This is another good place to look for movement. Any kind of angling to the jaw is going to force the vision down. It's going to have linear movement to it. If you have a very squared off short jaw, that's going to be horizontal lines. And then, in between it gives that more moderate impression, that more balanced and even effect. So her jawline movement adds to the overall vertical line impression that we're getting from her. So she's very obviously, to me, a linear face type, and I actually struggle to decide to see what her runner-up type would be. Like, I don't actually feel like that a good case could be made for either fullness or balance, even as a backup. I think that she is very solidly a linear face type, and that her subtype exploration would be limited to those types. Go exploring in those directions rather than the others, the full or the compact faces. The second celebrity I had in mind, which I think is a really good one for this in-between sort of problem that can arise for some people, and that's Zendaya. I think that you can see right away that no case can be made for a linear face type for her. I think you can see that. It can be helpful just to be able to rule one out right away, because even if you're left then with two face types and two potential body types, you've still really narrowed it down. I call that a quadrant. I think it's a broad, fun space to be able to play in without stressing about exact type too much. But if you want to, then the goal is to figure out your primary face type, and then a runner-up if you want it, or if it feels like there's a strong call for a secondary face type, like there will be for Zendaya, but there was not for Jennifer Aniston. So let's start with looking at the triangle of her eyes and her lips, which you can see makes a pretty even triangle. So that's an argument for balance. However, she also has very lovely full lips. She has soft width to her nose. She has, her eyes are narrow, but they just also seem large to me. Like there's a kind of soft lushness in her face. Her cheeks are quite soft and rounded. And then if you see photos of her smiling, that smile pulls very horizontal. And those are all clues for a full face type. So to me, she is more of a full face type than a balanced face type, but balance is her runner-up. And how do we decide then? It's really about the fullness of the facial features and all of that horizontal movement. Her eyes pull horizontal. Her nose, it's the flatness at the bottom, it's pulling horizontal. It's a line, another line. Her smile, her gorgeous full smile, it pulls very horizontal. There's a lot of sideways moving visual lines in her face. So she is a full face type, but runner-up as a balanced face type, because she does have that sort of more compact spacing. Interestingly, she also has sort of she has a little bit of sharpness in her jaw, just enough to give her face a little bit of length, and I think that that's probably another point toward fullness rather than a balanced face type, which does tend to have more of like an oval, like a short oval, round. Those are more typical face shapes for the balanced face types. And she's got just a little bit more going on there. But to me, the punchiness of her face is in the fullness of the features and those horizontally moving lines. So she's settled. The third face and face type example is going to be Emma Watson. Let's see, can we rule anything out immediately? What do you think? I think that it's harder to immediately rule something out for her. I do immediately, when I see her, see the compactness of her features, and that triangle would be quite balanced. I don't see a striking fullness. I don't see a lot of linear movement. I don't see a lot of horizontal movement. I get that stillness from her features right away, where they're fairly balanced, they're fairly compact. Her features don't have, they're not standing out in anything being larger or smaller, notably in comparison to the other features. It's sort of like, you could also draw a circle just around, and this is maybe where the word compact becomes useful again, just around the features to draw a little circle. And it's like the movement of the lines in the lips and the eyes and everything circle back around rather than having a strong line that seems to be going off the face, either this way or this way. It settles because it circles back in on itself. Do you see that? This is how things are working to my eyes. And when we see her smile, it does pull wider, but it also bows up a little bit, and it again is just creating the same circular pattern right back in on the face. It's not leading strongly off the face in any way. I think it's pulling a little wider than it is vertically. But not so much that you end up with a full face type. It still is very, very balanced. Even her jawline, it's more rounded. There doesn't have the sharpness or the flatness of movement that would push toward a different face type. It's just sort of oval. I actually think I would struggle to choose a runner-up type for her as well. Would you see her runner-up face type as being full or as being linear? To me, she has a remarkably balanced face. And so I'm not sure of a runner-up for her either. It might only be Zendaya, who I would say, here's your quadrant. This is your primary face type. This is your runner-up face type. But there is an argument of leaning into a different type or pulling other inspiration from that neighboring type. Whereas for these other two, I think I would advise them to stay in their column and play with neighboring types, whichever they're closest to with their body types, and leave it at that. I hope that I walked through rather quickly. I meant to go more slowly. But I hope that walking through that a little bit was helpful even if it was quicker than I intended. If you are struggling with your face type between two types, if you're still struggling with your face type between two types, and you are feeling really stuck, my first piece of advice would be to just choose the type you're more drawn to and call it your primary face type for now. Call the two that you're stuck between your quadrant. Explore both if you feel equally drawn to them. But if you're between two and you have a preference for one of them, go with your preference. You're going to get more out of it by exploring your personal style within a type or with a type or two than getting stuck trying to work out the more systemic approach, or the more systematic approach. It might, I'm pretty curious to hear feedback, because to me, I mean, it's my system. It's my system, so of course the face types are really obvious to me. But is that just like my artistic eye? Is this just always going to come down to my the vision that I have for it? Or if we were to poll a bunch of people, having listened and read and heard the way that I think and the way that I view these face types, would most people then be able to guess accurately? I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much of this will always, like the in-between cases, how much in-between cases would always come down to my personal artistic eye, because it's my system. I don't know. I don't know if we polled enough educated people in this, if the majority would say, obviously you're primarily this face type and this is just your runner-up. I like to think I've made it teachable. I cared to, but I don't know I don't know how much you actually can when it comes to personal style systems. We can talk about triangular shapes all day, but there are still going to be these on the fence calls that have to be made. And if you're one of the on the fence calls that needs to be made and you're trying to make it for yourself, I strongly feel you should choose your joy. I think you should go with your gut feeling. I think you should go with which one calls to you more, which one you feel more inspired and excited by, and then work on the details of your personal style within whatever base type or archetype you've chosen. I think at some point you just have to make a choice, and that the right choice for you, it's the little voice inside that you need to nurture. If you were then to have an appointment with me and I told you the other type, so what? You know, this, like, it's not going to be a huge deal in the end. If you're working through the particulars of your lines in your body and your face and filtering it through a type and using types for inspiration, the flavor might change, but I think that I think you get a lot of facts. I think you get a lot of true information for yourself out of exploring your personal style with the aid of a type that you could take with you to a different base type easily. I don't think you lose anything by enjoying a type and figuring out your lines and your preferences for yourself within that type. Even if you switch later on, or if I told you a different one later on, there's just so much that transfers over that you learn by exploring your own personal style. I hope that helps. If you have celebrity examples that you would like me to go through, or even just to type. And if that might be helpful to you, I could do that. If you have a different idea, I'm open to hearing it. I think that's all I can cover in this video. But if there's a way I could help make things clearer in another video or in a comment or a blog post, I would be happy to do that. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.